Well, if you know me fairly well, you know I tend to be a little bit optimistic. Kind of the way I'm wired. I have a tendency to just think things are going to work out, things will come together. And it wasn't always that way, but over the years I have seen that most of the stuff that I worry about never happens. So, I tend to be a little bit optimistic. Um, of course, it's not just because I was cautious that I believe things are going to turn out okay, but it has a lot to do with trust and faith in what God has said. Let me give you an example. Maybe this will help you understand where my optimism for things comes from and how cautiousness leads to optimism. It does. Just follow me along here, and I think you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But cautiousness, the practice of cautiousness, can help us become optimistic. At the Frederick Church of the Brethren, we're getting ready to launch a refocusing and a re-envisioning of our whole Christian Ed program at the church. Um, in the weeks before I began serving in the church, I had gone down and interviewed, and they voted and called me. A couple weeks between the calling and the start date. In those weeks, I began looking back over my life. I was called to be the pastor of discipleship and evangelism there, and discipleship, of course, is guiding somebody along a path of spiritual growth. And so I started examining my own life. How did I end up where I was spiritually? What was the process that took place? And the longer I prayed about this and the more I kind of turned this over in my mind, I began to see a process that the Lord had put me through that brought me to where I was at in my spiritual journey. And I began to imagine a Christian Ed program that actually intended to grow disciples, not just get somebody connected to a small group, but for those in those groups to grow to the point where a disciple of Jesus is prepared to become a disciple maker. So, that came to me, and so I began praying, seeking the Lord's wisdom. That's the cautiousness part, right? Talking to the Lord, talking things over, seeking His wisdom, seeking His guidance in all of this. And eventually a 4-step process came to my mind. It is a process to help a disciple of Jesus become a disciple maker. And to do that, we need to help individuals know the Lord. We need to help them know the Word. We need to help them live the Word, so that, and then we need to equip them to share the Word. So about a year ago, I began imagining what this process would look like in our church. And here we are right now, getting ready to launch that on the 19th of September, about 11 days from now. Some folks in our church, for some, it seems like the decision that was made was kind of hasty. But what they don't realize that I prayed and worked on this process for about a year and a half, exercising cautiousness, constantly going to God, constantly seeking His wisdom. I've gone to God. I've turned to Him, seeking His counsel, which is why I'm optimistic that this Christian Ed refocus has the potential to change the church where I work, where I serve. My point is this: the optimism is there. The optimism for this process is there because of the process, not because I ignored the potential pitfalls, but because I trusted in the Lord's wisdom and guidance throughout this whole envisioning process, not in my own wisdom. I was constantly going to God. I was cautious. I just didn't launch this program without turning and trusting to the Lord. Now, the world might say that I had wasted a year and a half to get this concept off the ground. but I believe it was time well spent listening to God. Question number 6 in the Disciples' Journal asks this: are the results of my life characterized by waiting on God? And that's a really good question. It's a good question to ask yourself, because speaking from personal experience, giving God time to speak into the process can give us a bit more confidence and assurance that we are making the right decision. Remember, I said cautiousness is not being timid, and it's not being afraid to make a decision, but it is allowing God to direct and guide us in the process. And when He does, when we permit God to speak into the process, we gain confidence and optimism. So we're going to talk some more about cautiousness tomorrow on transforming the world. I think during the break, overnight, I'm going to practice saying the word consciousness so I don't stumble over it. Oy vey. Oh well. Hey, my name's Pastor Greg. This is Transforming the World. I'll talk to you tomorrow.